So before we get started, I want to do a couple things. There may be a problem with the hierarchy. I want to get rid of this protection tag. That's not the problem. But I'm noticing on mine that if I middle mouse click here, get out of the weight tool, middle mouse click, I have some weird things going on. And I was experimenting around to see what was the problem here. And if I choose one, there's all kinds of crazy parameters. So if you're getting this, like there shouldn't be all these numbers like this for one joint. So what I did, and it seemed to fix it, was I middle mouse clicked everything, hit unfreeze, then hit freeze all. And what that seemed to do is get me back straightened out. And now I go in here, there's still some things that don't seem right. But I'm only getting one, for most of these, one position in Z, which is all I really should have. I don't know why a few of these, well, that may be because it's the first joint. And then the root I'm not as concerned about. So now if I double click that, everything's aligned and I have all zeros and no rotation in any of these joints, and that's what you want to have. Now if yours is like this to begin with, don't worry about the freeze and unfreeze, but it is important moving forward that these all be zeroed out. Alright, so a couple of things, other things that I want to do is I want to come to this Spline Dynamics tag, and I want to take the enable, put it in the viewport, show always, and I want to go to the IK spline, do the same thing, pull the enable, it's in the basic tab, show always, and there we go. Now see our animation still working. I want to control click here to get rid of that box, and I think we're just about ready to start this process. Okay, so one other thing is we need to get our timeline. I'm going to pull timeline F curve. I want to dock this because I don't want to have to keep chasing it around. And I'm going to take and grab this. I'm going to drop it right on top of that one, which is going to open up. Now I've got a materials tab and I've got a timeline tab. And I don't want all these things showing in here. So I'm going to click off. I'm going to hit Alt A to get rid of those. Now it didn't remove animation. It just got them out of the F-card manager. And then I want to come to where we have our tag. Now I want to middle mouse click that to select all those joints. I'm going to drag those right into the F-curve monitor. So we've got all these joints selected, and that's what we want. But we want to bake those into keyframes. So we're going to come to Function, Bake Objects. Now all we want to bake is the rotation of these joints. So click off Position. Now Position moves a little, but it's important for what we're going to do that we only bake the rotation. And bake expressions is fine, 0 to 300 is fine. So hit OK, and it's going to start working, and we see some keyframes in here. Now what we want to do to make sure this is working right is turn the Spline Dynamics off and the IK. I'm going to click off here and I'm going to hit play. And so that's all good. So now it's our joints that are being animated. Okay? And I will show you one thing. See how it's a little chunky here where these bends are, and I can move this back because we're now have keyframes for all that. So let's go in. This is just a quick thing here. I want to go into the I'm going to go up to Character Manager and get the Weights Manager. Now if we click on this right front tentacle, which we probably should name to our octopus, and we will, if you go up to the strength is 100% and make sure it's on smooth, okay? And then I'm going to hit Apply All, and you're going to see it start smoothing out. Apply All. Now I don't have the hypernerves on there, but this gets us a lot closer. And once the hyperNURBS is on there, it's going to smooth it the rest of the way out. And we can do that again later if we need to. So that's a little better. Okay. And play that through. Yeah, that's all looking pretty good. So I go back to 0. I want to come back here, and everything is back at 0. And there's our keyframes. So now to make this function the way we want to, I'm going to click away. I'm going to click on this right joint. That's where our tag is. And I'm going to go up to Animation and add a motion clip. All right. So here we definitely want to deselect position. We only want to bake the rotation into a clip. Create motion clip, remove included, and we do want to remove included animation and create pictures. That doesn't matter. Bake expressions is not necessary. And we can go ahead and name this. I'm going to name this Motion Tentacle, and I'm going to make it A. And that's arbitrary, but we're going to create a few of these motion clips. And so let's go ahead and click that, and you can see it working down here. It's only take a second. So now we have a motion clip. All right. It removed all the animation here. And if we play, we've got that. There's no dynamics on, no anything. And just to check this, yeah, all the animation has been removed from the rotation. Okay. Now, because of that, we do want to go back in and set our first keyframe. It's still set, so that's good. And we're going to zero it out, and that's good. Okay, so what can we do with this motion clip? Well, all we have to do is, and it's important you get it on the right one, we're going to go down to the left front, and I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to right click and go to Cinema Tags and come down and add a motion system, all right, which added us in here. Now if I take that same motion clip we created and drop it onto the left front, you're going to see that we now have animation in both. Okay, so what can we do further? Well, let's get this in here completely. So once you have these motion clips, right now they're playing at exactly the same speed, in exactly the same way. They're identical, okay? But if we go in here and let's take our top one, our right front, and we're going to stretch it out. We're going to take a right rear, and we're going to squash it a little. Now see what happens. Now they're going to start playing different because they're playing at different speeds. The right front is playing slower, the left front's playing faster, and I can even go into the left front, and I'm going to right click, and the spline, or forget that, right click and come down and flip. Now it's going to play it in the opposite direction. Now we've got a great deal of difference between those two. Okay? And so what you can do then is come in here and right click and say save motion source as I'm going to make that actually let's do it this way. I hate typing all this stuff. You double click on that and just hit copy, and then right click, save motion source, paste, and I'm going to come in here, Octopus, and I'm going to our motions, and motion tentacle A, I'm going to put that in there. Okay, so let's get rid of it. Oops, let's back it up. Okay, and that's straightened out because we have a keyframe there. And we're just going to get rid of that. And we're going to go back over and we're going to turn on Dynamics, going to turn on Spline. So let's go in here. First, let's remove this. We need to get rid of that anyway. And this is just on the right front. This is our spline that we're going to make all our motion clips with. So let's just get rid of that. And I'm going to go up to turbulence. Let's see, I've got 100 here. I forget where we were. I'm going to put that to I'll leave it at 100. Change this around. I've got this at 150, make it 130. And you can put these wherever you want. I'm just trying to get some variation in movement. And so, okay, so we got a lot of variation there. That's good. And come back here and see we're getting some crinkling because I'm going to go in here and get in these coordinates. 0 PNR. And what happens is every time, because we're baking these clips and we're telling it to remove the animation, which is what we do want, it's also removing our initial key. So we do have to go back and reset that each time before we make another recording, because we do want this to go back to zeros when we're done with our simulation, because if you don't, eventually those twists and turns will remain, and if you do 2 or 3 in a row, you end up with a pretty big mess. So we've got our animation where we want it. I'm going to again select this, and let's go back to our F curve and make sure that everything, see, we don't really want this like this. So when you get back here, click in here to click off and hit Alt A. Now that's also the Option key. So Alt A, we need to select those. So I'm going to middle mouse click right here to select all these, and we have to do this each time. So Functions, Bake Objects, deselect Position, and we're good there. And go ahead and bake. And so we're baking it to keyframes, and that's what we have. Turn these off. And there's our animation. And we'll go back. And so we want to grab this and, oops, animate and add motion clip, deselect position, and should still have this on the clipboard. I'm going to copy and change A to a B, and we should be good. We'll bake it, and you can see it baking down here. Okay, so now B has been put right into our front, and we can even turn the turbulence off. And so now we've got our animation in there, and of course that same animation can go in this. Yep. Yep. Okay, and so we want to copy and save that motion source as B. Okay, so I'm going to delete B out of that other tentacle, and I'm going to show you what else we can do with this. I'm going to take this and crank it down to about there. Actually, let's leave it. I'm going to extend my frames. 600. And I'm going to just drag this down a little bit, and I'm going to, that is B, so I want to bring load motion source. I want to load A back in, and now I'm going to take A and drag it behind here and just pull that over the other one, and this is going to create a transition between these two clips. And so now we play, and when it gets to that transition, it will start to go to the other action, straighten out, and you can add these, as many of these as you like. So I'm going to get rid of both of these right now. And you know, when I was doing my octopus animation, I had like 27 of these things, and I will say that it was a little easier when I was doing it because I used a plug-in that some of you may have. It's called Nitro Bake, and by just going to animation and selecting rotation, it was very simple to bake these out. But I didn't use this in this tutorial because this is not cheap. It's well worth the money because it'll bake just about, it will bake anything in Cinema 4D. And it makes baking these joints a lot easier than what we're doing. But I do want to show you one other thing, and we didn't really do this before, and so I'm going to go into the front view, and I'm going to turn all these things back on, turn on our turbulence. I'm going to crank it down a little so it's not so wild. Make this about 80. That can stay the same, and just go back to 100 on that. So as we're playing this, you can see that that is dipping below the base. Not too bad, but it is dipping below. But the tentacle's dipping below the, let's say, the ocean floor. So if we take a plane and stick it in here, and I'll bring it down so that it's just resting right there, the base of the octopus, and I know that 4000 covers the entire octopus, and we go in here, and under the hair tags there is a collider, because basically that's what we're working with when we're doing these simulations. We're working with this spline. Okay, we're only baking the animation on the joints, but it's the spline that is reacting. So with that set, I think it's pretty much a default works. And so now when we hit that, you see that that spline is hitting this base, and now it won't go below that that plane we put in there, which would be the ocean floor or whatever. And so that works pretty cool. And so when you go to bake that, and go back into forward, and I am going to and you can go into your Spline Dynamics, and the radius, this is for the collision. So let's put that to 2, and then go back into the front mode, and I'm going to turn this back on for now. And we play that, not a whole lot of difference. But if you're getting a lot of intersection, you can keep playing around with that radius. And the radius, remember, is based on the spline, not on the joints or on the geometry. So you may have to crank that up to, let's say, 10 if you don't want the geometry to hit. There. Yeah. Now the joints are not hitting, but of course some of the geometry still is. Okay. And so looks like we're getting some twist. I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to come back here and zero that out. And that's why we set up that zeroing out, because you don't want to keep getting that twist simulation after simulation. Okay. And let's make sure that's still going. So I'm going to bake this one last one to show that with that collision thing, I'm going to get rid of this. With that collision plane, it will bake that way as well. So we want to go back in here to F curve, and we still have this, so we want to hit click and Alt A to get rid of that, to bring our joints up. Going to middle mouse click to select our joints. For some reason they're not selecting. I don't know why. And like so. And we'll come to function, bake objects, and deselect position. And all right, I have that on, I'm going to put it back to 300. Let's cancel this. I forgot I changed that. Change that to 300. Okay, function, bake object 0. Let's get position out of there and hit OK. So it's baking some keyframes for us. I'm going to deselect this, and turbulence, and see what we got. Okay, so we got that. Okay, that's all cool. I'm going to select just this second joint, not the root. Animate, motion clip, deselect position, and we can paste in and just make this C now, and hit OK, and it's baking. Okay, so nothing's on. Let's go back into the front view. We'll turn our plane back on so we can see it. and it baked in that collision with the bottom. And of course, if you drag that into the other one, the right front, it's going to be the same situation. Again, it's the spline that collides, not the joints and not the geometry. So you have to mess around with that. So that's it. There's other things you can do with these motion clips. This gets pretty involved, clipping off the end. You know, this actually changes the speed, but by changing the end, I'm cutting those frames, okay? But I'm not changing the speed. The speed is going to stay the same. I'm just going to have less frames, and the same with the start. You can cut off the front, okay? But it's not changing the speed of that clip. So if we bring this up to here, the speed of that is still the same. Okay, and then you can even go into the hierarchy, and if you hold down Control, you can unclick, and you can actually select turn off joints. So if you wanted to not have these end joints, you could deselect those, or if you didn't want to have these joints working, deselect those. It gets pretty involved when you have 30, 34, 35 things in there. So that's about it, and you can see that if it doesn't matter how many of these you've had, 8 tentacles or how many ever you can handle. Put in a motion system here. I'm going to put another one in here. Oops, and so we're going to bring in load a motion source. Did we only? Oh, we didn't save C yet. Okay, bring in B. Load motion source. Bring in A. And I'm just going to drag B down into this, C down into here. And now we have animation on everything. Oh, yeah, one last thing. Let's close this up. I'm going to hold Option, and there we have some smoothing for our octopus. I want to show you that there's a few other things you can do with this, because this spline, of course, is dynamic. So I put this torus in the scene, and I'm going to hit X-ray on. And if we go down here, right-click, go down to hair tags, put a hair collider on that. Now right now I don't have any other disturbance. If I hit play, you see nothing happens. But let's hit play, and now I'm going to take this torus and just move it around, and you can see that you can affect this in a lot of different ways. Get some pretty cool results just by agitating that spline. So how would you bake this? Well, that's the trickier part, but let me go in here. I'm going to double check, make sure this is right. Okay. So what you could do to bake this is, first you have to bake the torus. So if you come up to Character, Manager, and Cappuccino. All right, and we only want position, because we're only going to be moving the torus, all right? And that's really all we're keyframing right now. So if you press Start Real Time, nothing's going to happen until I start moving this. And as soon as I start moving this, this animation is going to start, and it's going to start putting keyframes on this torus, and then it's going to stop at 300. So let's see how this is going to work, okay? Okay, so now we've got that. Let's just close this. Now this torus is keyframed, okay? And let's even just turn it off to see what this looks like. And so we've got this movement, okay? And it's all keyframed, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. So now we can go over here. Let's hit Alt-A. and select our, all right, select these. So those are all highlighted. Now we can get this back to 0. And now we can go back into Function, Bake Objects. Again, we want to turn position off because now we're baking the joints. And just have rotation, and let's hit OK. Should only take a few seconds, and it's done. We've got keyframes. So now let's turn the torus off so it's no longer affecting anything. And let's just see why this, oh, I know why this isn't working, because we have to turn these two things off. Now we should get, oh, there we go. Okay. So remember, we can control the speed of this once we get in. See, it's a little erratic, but once we bake that into a motion clip, we'll be able to control that a little better. So let's just go ahead and do that. I'm going to get rid of that motion clip, and we're going to select that, go up to Animate, add motion clip, get rid of position, and we'll just change that in a second. I don't remember what we were using. And hit on and go. Okay, so all the keyframes have been removed and torus is off, and let's just play this motion clip. Okay, so it's a little jerky, but if we take, let's see where we went. Okay, I want to get these out of here. This is getting confusing. Okay, so if we take this, and let's say we stretch that out and really slow it down. Okay, so there's a lot you can do with this. So let's get rid of that for now. So we have no animation here. Okay, and we could save that. So other things you can do is you can set up blocks. So let's pull this object out, and in other words, things that affect the spline, like barricades or bumpers, and let's just set those just like this, just to give you some idea. Maybe we want this one a little closer too, and you could make these different sizes. We're just going to go with this. I just want to show you what possibilities there are. So we grab all three of those, put X-ray on. It's not going to do all of them at once, unfortunately. And okay, and then I do want to assign a tag to each of those. So cinema hair colliders. Now if we turn our turbulence on, and let's crank it up a little bit, say about 120. I want to make sure these are all good still. Yep, that all looks good. Let's turn our dynamics on. And so now this turbulence is going to throw this spline against these blocks, and so it'll actually cause some different movement as it hits those. And you can do combinations of that and turn the torus on, and now that torus still has animation on it. Get a whole different feel to it now. Okay, so that's not bad, but let's go down here and let's pull this out a little bit. That'll slow down some of those erratic actions. Let's go into F mode, F curve, and if we go up to function and we'll go to simplify, and let's simplify by that. Now that didn't do much. Function, let's go to key reducer, and let's see. Oh, that's much better. Okay, maybe a little more. Okay, that's great. Now we've got a lot less keys. So many less now we can actually grab some of these top ones and pull them down. And grab some bottom and pull them up. All right. So now let's take a look at our animation here. What we got going. Okay, so let's go ahead and bake that too. Alt A, get rid of that. Batter joints are back in there. I'm going to select all those. I'm going to say function, bake objects. I want to turn off position, and I think that's it. We're going to hit OK. And it looks like I should have straightened out my hierarchy, but let's see how it looks. And we can turn off turbulence and all this other business. And let's see what we've got. Actually, need to turn these off too. And turn that off. Okay. Alright, so now let's just put a motion tag on here, a motion clip. Click off position and go ahead and bake. Almost done. Okay, we've got our motion source in there. And there we go. I'm going to deselect that. Now if you wanted to pull that out a little bit, oops. Pull that out so it's maybe not quite as violent. Let's see. So those are just a few more things you can do with that spline. And don't forget that all of these turbulence and wind, wind, these all have fall off. And so you can set fall off and move that around, or set up almost like a course here. And you can do all kinds of things, you know, because you're working with dynamics. So I hope it's gives you some idea, and have fun with this.